It's the dead of night. August 8th, 1963, a Royal Mail train slices through the darkness, traveling from Glasgow to London. Tucked away in one of its carriages are mailbags stuffed with cash. Not just a little cash, but what would be worth nearly £67 million today, or a staggering 800 crore rupees. At the controls, driver Jack Mills sees something strange up ahead, a red signal. This is impossible. At this time, on this stretch of track, the light should be green. But rules are rules. He brings the massive train to a halt on the deserted track. The world goes silent for a few seconds. But this silence is the calm before a storm. The opening act of what would become the Great Train Robbery, one of the most audacious heists of the century. This isn't a movie script, this really happened. A crew of criminals managed to rob a government mail train without firing a single shot. How did they pull it off? The seeds of this incredible plan were sown months earlier in the back rooms of London, where a group of seasoned criminals gathered in secret. The mastermind was a man named Bruce Reynolds. He had a golden ticket, inside information about the Royal Mail, leaked by a mysterious senior security officer whose identity remains unknown to this day. This source revealed that on certain days, a special carriage known as the High Value Packages, or HVP, transported enormous sums of cash across the country. Now, Reynolds and his crew were pros, but they'd never robbed a train. So they brought in the experts, another gang called the South Coast Raiders, who had a knack for hitting targets on the rails. The team grew, eventually numbering over 15 people. Their one unbreakable rule: no guns, no bullets. Their only weapon was meticulous planning. For months, they were like ghosts, studying train routes, memorizing timetables, and finding every single crack in the security system. They were preparing to steal from the government itself, and they couldn't afford a single mistake. On the evening of August 7th, 1963, at 6:50 p.m., the target train pulled out of Glasgow Central Station, right on schedule. It was a mail train, a moving post office with 12 carriages and 72 staff members sorting letters and parcels on the go. This train was a marvel of efficiency, designed to exchange mailbags at stations without even stopping. Attached right behind the engine was the prize, the HVP carriage. And on this particular night, it was carrying an unusually large haul. Because of a recent bank holiday weekend, the cash inside wasn't the usual £300,000. It was nearly £3 million. But here's the detail that changed everything. The usual HVP carriages, the ones fitted with alarms and security systems, were out of service. A reserve carriage, M3024M, was being used instead. This replacement had no alarm, no bars on the windows, nothing. For the robbers, this wasn't just a stroke of luck. It was the result of their insider knowledge. This single vulnerability was the key that would unlock a fortune. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the clock was ticking down to the most daring heist in British history. At around 3 a.m. on August 8th, Under the cover of darkness, the gang launched their operation. They found the trackside signals at Sears Crossing and went to work. They covered the green light and, using a simple battery pack, powered up the red light. When the train approached the crossing, driver Jack Mills saw the red signal and stopped, just as they knew he would. His assistant driver hopped out to use the emergency trackside phone, only to find the line had been cut. At that exact moment, figures emerged from the darkness of the surrounding bushes and swarmed the train. They overpowered the assistant driver. More robbers climbed into the engine cab. When Jack Mills tried to fight back, he was brutally struck on the head with an iron bar and he fell unconscious. While this was happening, other team members uncoupled the engine and the first two carriages, including the precious HVP coach, from the rest of the train. The plan was to drive this section about a kilometer down the track to Bridego Bridge, where their getaway truck was waiting. The gang had even brought their own retired train driver to do the job, but he froze. The controls of this modern engine were completely alien to him, and he panicked. With their plan threatening to fall apart, the robbers had to think fast. They had no choice. They revived the injured Jack Mills and, at their command, forced him to drive his own train to the prearranged spot. When they reached Bridego Bridge, the next phase began. They stormed the HVP carriage, injuring 5 postal workers inside and tying them up. Before them lay 128 mailbags filled to the brim with banknotes. The total weight was a massive 2.5 tons. The robbers knew they had a tight window, just 15 minutes before the alarm would be raised. They formed a human chain, frantically passing the heavy bags from the train to their waiting Austin Lodestar truck. In the chaos, they managed to load 120 of the bags, leaving 8 behind as time ran out, before vanishing into the night. One of the robbers turned to the terrified postal staff and warned them not to move for 30 minutes. With the truck loaded and 2 Land Rovers with fake license plates as escorts, the gang sped away. They drove 43 kilometers to their prearranged hideout, a remote farmhouse called Leverslade Farm. As they escaped, they coolly listened in on police radio frequencies with a VHF scanner, staying one step ahead of the law. Once at the farmhouse, they felt untouchable. They celebrated their incredible success, counting out their shares of the stolen £2.5 million. And then, in a moment of sheer arrogance, they made their biggest mistake. They started a game of Monopoly, but instead of using the colorful play money, they used the real, stolen banknotes. They had no idea this board game would be their undoing. The police, meanwhile, were closing in. They took the robber's 30-minute warning to the postal workers as a clue and started a massive search within a 50-kilometer radius of the bridge. Hearing this on their scanner, the gang panicked. They quickly divided up the remaining cash and decided to abandon the hideout. They paid an accomplice to go back and burn the farmhouse down, wiping away all evidence, but he got greedy. He took his cut of the money and fled, never setting the fire. Soon after, a neighbor noticed the suspicious comings and goings at the supposedly empty farm and called the police. When investigators raided Leatherslade Farm, they hit the jackpot. They found the empty mailbags, scattered post, and the repainted getaway truck. The robbers had tried to wipe the place clean of fingerprints, but they had missed one crucial spot: the Monopoly board. The prints they left on the game pieces and the board were a perfect match for records already held by Scotland Yard. The net tightened quickly. Within days, 14 of the 16 core gang members were arrested, but only to truly got away. The stand-in train driver who had panicked, and the mysterious Royal Mail insider who had provided the information in the first place. The trial was a sensation. The judge called it the biggest robbery of the century, and the sentences reflected that. Most of the gang received 30 years in prison. The site of the heist, Bridego Bridge, was forever renamed by locals and is still known today as Train Robbers Bridge. But for the driver, Jack Mills, there was no recovery. The trauma and the head injury he suffered that night meant he never worked again. He passed away just 7 years later. A story of incredible planning and fatal arrogance written in the annals of crime history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life and informative stories. Don't forget to turn on the bell icon so you never miss our next video.